Time for another Regulation Nation report tonight. Does the E in EPA now stand for excessive? We may find out very soon.
The Environmental Protection Agency has an ambitious 2015 agenda, one that's getting added scrutiny just days after the EPA announced an air pollution rule some are calling the most expensive federal regulation in history.
And what does that mean? That means a cost that's borne by American citizens, by American consumers, by increasing the cost of energy, increasing the cost of doing anything in this country, and limiting our ability to grow and expand and create jobs.
There is also an ongoing battle over the EPA's efforts to expand its power to regulate water. Critics say a new regulation could grant the EPA authority over things as basic as seasonal puddles that crop up on your private property after a heavy rain. EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy said pushing the regulation forward has been a, quote, communications challenge, adding,
that we'll be able to get this rule over the finish line.
The House, with the help of 35 Democrats, passed a measure blocking the water regulation. The White House has pledged to veto the bill. The most contentious battle, however, remains the regulation of coal-fired power plants. Numerous state leaders, including many Democrats, are pushing back against the administration's regulations, saying they could eliminate hundreds of thousands of jobs and almost certainly drive up the cost of electricity. McCarthy says the EPA is trying to work with those leaders.
We have specifically looked at the coal states, at where they are, and we've made a goal for them, or a set of standards for them, that we think is reasonable and achievable for them.
But critics claim key stakeholders don't have a seat at the negotiating table and often can't get an explanation about the data the EPA is relying on to make its regulatory decisions. Just last week, the House passed a measure aimed at making the EPA more accountable and transparent when crafting new regulations. The bill's sponsor, Arizona Republican David Schweikert, says, quote, for far too long, the EPA has approved regulations that have placed a crippling financial burden on economic growth in this country without public evidence to justify their actions.
Earlier this week, the Supreme Court announced the justices will hear a case challenging the EPA's power in the spring, specifically whether the agency must take costs into account when crafting broad new regulations.